I want us to get into an article that you recently wrote, and the title is How to Revitalize Connection in a Roommate Marriage. And this is part one, right? Part one is talking about the emotional connection. So, Danielle, what inspired you to write this article?
Yes, well, the short answer would be my clients.
Hmm.
Like I said, I primarily work with couples, and the vast majority of the couples I see come in and they kind of have these experiences in their relationships, right? They all use different words, but oftentimes the word roommate is tossed out, right? We don't feel like husband and wife anymore, right? Sometimes that friendship is still solidly there. Sometimes it's not, though. Sometimes it's described as a business partnership, or we just don't know how to connect anymore. And so this article was birthed out of a desire to just be helpful to the people that I see every day.
Yeah, and you've kind of you're touching on in this next question, but who specifically is this article written for?
Yes, you're right. I did touch on that just a little bit already.
That's right.
But really, if you are an individual in a relationship or a couple who's just experiencing that sense of, I don't know how to connect with my partner anymore. I don't know when we lost it, or I do know exactly when we lost it, but it doesn't feel like it's there anymore, right? I don't feel like we can just talk. And when we do talk, it feels like it's more about schedules, or we
Mm.
always get into these arguments, and it just prevents us from really emotionally connecting. That is who this article would be written for.
Yeah. So, before we dive into it, like, is that God's design for a marriage to be in that roommate status?
Well, it would be interesting if I said yes, but no, right? And
Right. Yeah,
I think
exactly.
one reason it is a problem is people are coming in because it just doesn't settle well,
Hmm.
right? When you're in it, it feels miserable and lonely. And I think that is
Right.
that God-given sense of, no, we should feel like one, right? We're
Mhm.
created to be connected so deeply to a partner. And so when that's off and that like shut down, cut off, disconnected feeling is there, we have that
Mhm.
sense like this is not the way it is supposed to be at all.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. So let's talk about some of the things you mentioned in your article. You discuss how brain chemistry changes over the course of a relationship. Can you explain that a little bit to those who are watching or listening to today's episode?
Yeah. And I do want to stay pretty general with this because when you get
Hmm.
into the nitty gritty, it's super exciting, but it's also probably to a point of nitty grittiness that I personally should not be talking about as a counselor instead of like a brain scientist,
Hmm.
neuroscientist.
Right.
But to keep it very general, and this is kind of how I phrased it in my article, I think it's really important for couples to know that when you first begin a relationship, you have a lot of neurochemicals and things happening in your body and in your brain to help you out. It almost provides a cushion or like a net of safety over your budding relationship, right? When it's still a delicate plant, we get increases in dopamine, which are like happy chemicals, and
Hmm.
testosterone, which brings that sense of excitement and newness, and kind of that sense of, I'm falling in love with this person. And it's exciting and it's good. And it hits every couple differently. That's a really normal, good part of the relationship that a lot of couples experience early on in the dating process. But then the important part is that's going to fade. And it's a good thing and a healthy thing for those wild highs to kind of dissipate. And it's different for every couple, but within the realm of normal would be 6 months to maybe 2, 3 years into the relationship is normally when we see that cushion dissipating. And when that happens, it would be really normal for a couple to kind of sit back and think, what happened? Did I fall out of love with this person? It can cause them to doubt themselves, the relationship, and wonder just, oh man, what do we even have here? Because I used to know without a shadow of a doubt that I loved you. And now I don't feel anything.
Hmm.
And I think an additional note I will say is we transition from that kind of neurochemical enhanced high of falling in love into this really special part of the relationship that's more stable and steady. And it can be really healthy and really good, but it's so soft and in the background that we don't notice it's there unless we're really looking for it.
Hmm.
So to summarize, it starts off, we're really helped, right? Our brains
Hmm.
help us fall in love with somebody, but then it fades just naturally and it's healthy and normal.
Yeah, and I appreciate you normalizing that. But so, what if a couple they're viewing each other as a roommate? You mentioned things like to look for the effects or the causes rather, like busyness, conflict. Can you talk to us a little bit more about those things?
Yes, yes. So every couple's journey into this kind of roommate status can look different.
Hmm.
But some of the themes that I've noticed in my office would be one, busyness, right?
Hmm.
Life happens. And we don't have as much intentional time that just kind of magically happens once we hit real life, right? Kids come, our careers start
Hmm.
picking up, and we get so busy that sometimes just that relationship piece, all those times we had to intentionally connect, that seemed really easy and natural before.
Right.
Now they get really hard and it takes time to schedule it in. And we just lose some of that intentionality. And like I said, it
Hmm.
becomes difficult when we get so busy and there's so many other competing priorities. So
Hmm.
that would be one piece, just the busyness. The
Yeah.
second piece would be conflict. And I think we see pretty commonly either too much or too little. And what I
Hmm.
mean by that is, again, when two people really don't have that really big cushion of that falling in love feeling, it's almost like the blinds are ripped off our eyes, and here we are really experiencing this person, flaws and all. And that's when the conflict starts settling in. And it really depends on the couple, but what tools do we have available? Are we getting into
Hmm.
conflict all the time and it's getting unmanageable and it escalates? And so we kind of just give up, right? It's hard to connect when we're fighting all the time, right? It's
Hmm.
hard to feel that sense of emotional connection and safety when it feels like we can't even start a normal conversation. And then this other piece, which would be almost too little. Do we avoid conflict? And does a bunch of stuff just get swept under the rug until pretty soon there's just this massive mound, right?
Hmm.
That's not being dealt with. That will also lead to a lack of emotional connection.
Hmm.
So busyness, conflict, and then another area that I see really commonly would be wounds that never heal, or maybe only partially heal.
Hmm.
You look back on your relationship, and this is something I encourage all of my couples to do. Really reflect on those pivotal moments, moments where maybe you felt really hurt in a conflict or in a situation, or you felt like your partner wasn't able to be there for you in the way that you needed. Those impact the relationship for years, right? And if
Hmm.
they never go back and get fully healed, it's going to prevent us from being able to fully connect with our partner moving
Hmm.
forward. And when we have a pile up of those, or if they're just massive wounds that, like I said, have never gotten healed, that's going to be a pretty major barrier.
Mm. Yeah, that's good. And that's really helpful too. So, as we look at this and we see, maybe there are people who view their spouse as roommates. What are some practical tips to couples who are living as roommates and they want to kind of reconnect emotionally?
Yeah. Well, my first tip is to take care of yourself because you're in for a wild ride.
Amen.
It takes time to get to the place where we feel like roommates, and it takes a lot of time and energy and effort and courage to kind of get unstuck from that place. So my very first encouragement is take care of yourself, right? Because it's going to take a lot out of you and it's going to be really hard. Um,
Mhm.
and so when I say take care of yourself, and I'm thinking like physically,
Right.
are we sleeping? Are we eating well? Are we resting? Emotionally, relationally? Like, do you have a support system? Do you have anyone in your life who you can go to and you know that they are there for you
Hmm.
and they're for your relationship, right? Almost like that, just that sense of support. because things are going to get hard. Right? And so if you have that person, and normally I recommend someone who's of the same sex as you, right? So women, do you have a woman you can go to? Men, do you have a man you can go to for that sense of support? And then also spiritually, right? If you are a Christian, like, are you plugged in, right? Do you have other outlets to really get encouragement, support, to grow spiritually? Because all of those pieces are going to help you have the perseverance and the stamina to continue into this process. That's going to be first and foremost is self. And then throughout my article, I do sprinkle quite a few things. But the first ones that come to mind would be trying something old and trying something new. So when I say try something old, this is something that you can decide with your partner, but essentially looking back on your relationship, maybe what's something that you guys used to enjoy together? Or where did you first meet? And revisit that place, that park, that college campus, that restaurant you used to eat at. Do things that you used to enjoy and see what it feels like, right? We change throughout the course of our relationship, of course, and sometimes it's hard for the relationship to keep up. So taking the intentional time to say, let's go revisit something that we used to enjoy and see how it feels. Do we still like it? Do we actually hate it now? And what does it just feel like to be back in this old setting? Sometimes that can be an easy way, kind of ease into something a little bit more emotionally connected. So something new really feeds into almost like that adrenaline center, right? Like, let's build something new together and see what happens. And this can get pretty sloppy, but is there food we've never tried? I'm not suggesting skydiving, but that would definitely be a thrill to try together. Like, is there something that we can try together that's new, fresh, exciting? And then we get to share in what was that like for us. So those are the first two that come to mind.
Yeah. And Danielle, this is very helpful because I don't view my spouse as a roommate, and I certainly don't think she views me as one. But even still, like, these are great preventative things to do for couples who've been married, because we'll be celebrating 18 years in just a few weeks. So like, I know, really, 18 years. But these practical steps that you gave, they're super helpful to take those preventative measures so that maybe down the road this never happens, right? Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because these are not just, like you said, for couples who are already in this place of really struggling, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, these are things that we should be thinking about doing before we get to that point. Or when we notice just some signs like, we've been really busy recently. It feels like I haven't connected with my spouse for a little bit. What can we do to just bring a little bit more intentionality in and make sure that, things are still good?
Right. Yeah. So I thought it was very helpful. What's the final piece of advice that you would give to couples who are watching this or listening to it on the podcast?
Yeah. I think first and foremost, like I said earlier, this is not easy to do. It's hard. And depending on where you're at in this process, it almost takes a bunch of vulnerability, right? And bravery, because stepping out and really initiating some of these conversations, heart to hearts, if it's not something that we've done recently, or if there have been wounds that haven't been healed, that can feel so scary, right? And it's really, really normal for it to be a sloppy hot mess, right? When we first start this out. And as we're trying new things, it can be really easy to feel discouraged and disappointed. And so my encouragement would be, if that happens, if you feel like, oh, I made an attempt and it just blew up, I accidentally stepped on a mine and now everything is worse, or things exploded, we got into bad conflict. First of all, I do want to say yes, right? That makes sense. You're stepping out and you're changing the way things were, and that is going to create a ruckus. But second, this is what counselors are here for, right? It's not to be a permanent crutch for you or something like that. It's really just to come in, help you get unstuck, and then let you go on your merry way and enjoy, right? Enjoy this new stage in your relationship. And so that would be my encouragement is go for it, try some new things, but also if it blows up, reach out, right? You're not alone
Right.
in this. And it would be really normal for it to get sloppy.